What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the 715 Bucks Tailgate Talk podcast as part of the Man Cave podcast that is brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Dan Casper here with you as always. A big thanks for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. A quick reminder, don't forget to follow and subscribe to either the 715 Bucks Tailgate Talk podcast or the Man Cave podcast, like on Spotify, Apple, or on YouTube. And if you're on Spotify or Apple, if you could give us a 5-star rating and a positive review so others can find the podcast. Last night, the Bucks falling to the Indiana Pacers in a back-and-forth game. Before the game last night, it was announced that former Bucks player and recent part owner of the Bucks, Junior Bridgman, passing away at the age of 71. Bridgman had just purchased, I believe it was a 10% stake in the franchise just last year. Former Bucks player and businessman after his playing career. So sad news before the game last night with the announcement that Junior Bridgman passing away. And then the Bucks in a back and forth affair. I mean, like if you had to pick a quote unquote rival for the Bucks, is it the Pacers right now? Like I feel like that Heat one is kind of cooled off, no pun intended with the Heat thing there, but you know, you look at last year with some of their matchups and then the playoff series and, you know, some of these games here that we've seen so far this year and especially last night. I mean, is it fair to say that the Pacers are the main rival right now to the Bucks? I mean, I think that's I'd probably, if I had to pick one, I don't think there's a whole lot of rivalries anymore in the NBA, not like it used to be. You know, there's a couple here and there, but nothing like I would, you know, when I think about 80s hoops, 90s hoops, you had some bad blood between some of these teams. I mean, we know the Bulls and Pistons back in the day, and you know some of those matchups and such, even Celtics and Lakers and that. I don't know if there's really, you know, Heat and Knicks and Bulls. I don't know if there's anything to that level right now. But I guess if I had to pick one for the Bucks, it probably would be the Pacers. And maybe part of it is too because Tyrese Haliburton is a Wisconsin kid, you know, Oshkosh and such over there. So, but you know, last night's game in a big game in terms of standings and seedings with the Bucks and Pacers and Pistons all kind of fighting for that 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. We knew this was a big game, and we knew both teams really, you know, I don't want to say desperate for a win, but really wanted to come away with a W, especially, you know, when you look at the Bucks coming off of 2 losses against the Magic and the Cavs, and you know, with this tough portion of their schedule that they've just begun, and it was back and forth. It was tight throughout. Nobody really went on any big runs. I mean, whether it was the Bucks or whether it was the Pacers going on a little bit of a run, you know, it didn't last that long. But towards the end there, you had the Bucks taking the lead. Looked like that maybe they were going to be able to pull it off. But the Pacers, credit to Rick Carlisle for this play. I don't know if anybody had seen this play. It was like a football play last night. Everybody's kind of in motion, and everybody, you know, after, you know, said hut, everybody kind of moves towards the hoop, and then Tyrese leaks off to the sideline there, hits a corner 3, gets fouled on the shot. Not to, you know, make excuses or anything, but you know, when Doc challenged the foul call, the officials said it was they upheld it, saying it was a foul because they didn't the defender, in this case Giannis, didn't give Tyrese room to, you know, come down. And kind of debatable because I mean Tyrese went out of bounds, so but say what you want about that. To me, it was questionable, and I don't know if, you know, to me, it's one of those, if they don't call it, in a football sense, in a football comparison, it's like it depends on the call ruling on the field or the call on the field. If they called it a foul, they're probably going to uphold it. If they don't call it a foul, they probably don't. They probably keep it, that call. Just kind of using a football analogy there, but questionable in my opinion, debatable in my opinion there. But credit to the Patriots, and they did something similar to that last year to the Celtics in the postseason. I saw some similarities there, but I mean that was a creative play call there to get Tyrese the ball and in the corner and make that three, and making the free throw at the end, and probably not wanting Giannis shooting a three at the end there, but disappointing ends when it looked like the Bucks were going to be able to pull that thing off and pick up a win on the road against the Pacers and get a little bit more of a breathing room in terms of the standings and such. But man, tough game, and you look at it, Brook Lopez had himself a nice night from the offensive side at least, 9 of 11 overall, 23 points to lead the Bucks. But Giannis, 9 of 14, 19 points. I was listening to Shaq a little bit at the halftime report, and I've heard him say this before. And he's talked about, Giannis having a good game, but he's got to do more. And he kind of used his own playing experience to the example. Like he talked about Phil Jackson and Pat Riley, always kind of challenging him at halftime to do more. Nice game, solid game, but you can do more and to dominate and such. And you look at it, Giannis finishing with 19 points, 9 of 14 from the fields. You're probably saying, yeah, can you do more down in the post, down low? 17 rebounds, was aggressive on the boards and such, dishing it out 7 times. But you also can't have a game where Dame goes 4 of 14 from the field and finishing with just 15 points. You can't go, if he's supposed to be the third option, and Kyle Kuzma, he can't finish with just 9 points. Credit to Prince. He was on fire in the early parts of the game from the three-point land, finishing with 18. But, with this, we talked about it the other day. To me, this is a Bucks team. This is what's going to hold this Bucks team from advancing in the postseason or beating teams ahead of them in the standings like the Cavs, like Boston, and like the Knicks if they were to happen to get through the first round. I don't think they can beat a team like those three because they don't have a lot of consistent offensive consistency outside their top two. You look at the depth, the offensive depth of this team. You look at the Knicks, they've got offensive depth. We know Boston has depth. We know Cleveland has depth. For crying out loud, they got a half a dozen guys that average in double-figure scoring. It's not just Donovan Mitchell. For this Bucks team right now, it's just Giannis and Dame. And, Kuzma's been a nice addition. He's been a really good addition. But does he provide enough offensive help? Does he give you enough? It's up there, and I know he's averaging, about 15 points per game in that, but, when Dame has those, this is one of my concerns with this Bucks team, when Dame has those cold stretches or cold games that sometimes he does. One night he'll go off and drop over 30 points. But then there's other times that he's kind of cold, like last night, just 15 points from your number 2 guy. Yeah, he had 11 dimes to go with a double-double. But there's times where Dame's just got a cold night shooting. And last night was one of those, just shooting 28% from the field overall. And I don't know if the Bucks have enough offensive resources after that to kind of make up for it. Not like what the Knicks or the Celtics or what the Cavs have, for sure. I mean, just the other night, was it Celtics against, was it the Jazz game? Let me double check here. But you look at the Celtics, and Sam Hauser. Okay, Sam Hauser for the Celtics against the Jazz, getting the start. Okay, dropping 33 points. Now the dude was on. I mean, he chucked up 19 3-pointers and made 9 of 19 threes. But you had Sam Hauser coming in and giving you 33 points with no Jason Tatum in the game. You had Jaylen Brown doing his thing with 26 points. Derek White contributed 18. they got other guys that can kind of step up and such. And this was a game too where they didn't have Porzingis playing. So, and we know about the depth with the Cavs and the Knicks and such. But hopefully, Bucks could kind of, I don't know if the right way is, or right way to say this is to tread water during this tough stretch of games coming up here, because things ain't going to get any easier. Gets a little easier, I guess, when you're going up against the Lakers without LeBron. Hopefully, coming back home for this game against the Lakers, you can pick up that W before you head off to a big-time West Coast trip, gain a little confidence. This Bucks team has struggled on the road this year. And you look at this West Coast travel schedule for them, let me back up a little bit here. You got 3 games at home first with the Lakers, then a rematch against the Pacers on Saturday. Then right after that, it's OKC. And then you go to the West Coast starting next week. So hopefully you can start to, or at least you can gain a little bit of momentum. You can win some of these games. Ideally, you win all 3 of these at home. And then you're going to be put to the test with these five straight road games. Yeah, 5 straight road games on the West Coast before returning home and facing the Knicks. This is why I feel like it's important. It's super important for the Bucks to at least get that 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, so they can get that home court advantage in the first round. But they got to show that they can go on the road and win some games. Because this year, you look at it, Bucks are under 500, just 14 of 17 on the road. And I get it, teams on average do worse on the road than that, but you look at the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference right now, all winning records on the road. Cleveland's 25-6, Boston's 24-7. They actually have a better away record than they do at home. New York's 20-12, and you got Milwaukee at 14-17, Pacers at 15-18. For crying out loud, the Pistons are 19-15 on the road, right? So they've got a winning record too. Got to show that they can go on the road and pick up some wins. And when you look at what they've done on the road so far this year, and you look at this West Coast trip that they got coming up next week, there's not a whole lot of at least I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. I don't know. Bobby Portis, when he does come back, maybe he can provide a nice little spark. I mean, you would think just with his energy and with his offensive game, he'd be able to provide a little bit more coming off the bench. But again, I think you look at Bobby too, there's been times where it's been a little inconsistent. And we know he's going to probably be a little bit rusty, but at least he's going to get some games in before the playoffs start. So, but again, a quick look at the standings as they are right now on this Wednesday. Bucks are still holding on to that 4th spot in the Eastern Conference standings, tied up there with the Pacers with identical records, 36-28. But the Pistons are right there too, 37-29. Again, this Eastern Conference it's in tiers. You've got Cleveland in tier 1, 15-game winning streak. I mean, unreal what Cleveland's doing this year. Then I'd say tier 2 between Boston and New York. Tier 3 with the Bucks, Pacers, and Pistons. Tier 4 with your play-in teams. And then it's tier 5. Because it sure looks like, unless Philadelphia or Toronto, Brooklyn even, going a little bit of a mini run in Chicago falls off here, but it sure looks like we know the playoff teams in the Eastern Conference, barring somebody having just an awful run of losing, it kind of feels like we know who are going to be the top 6 and who we know are going to be the next 4 in that play-in round, just because of how everything's separated. Like Detroit, Indiana, Milwaukee, they're up 5.5 games over Atlanta, and Atlanta's at 7 seed. So it feels like we kind of already know where the playoff teams are at this point. Western Conference, if you're a T-Wolves fan, T-Wolves are a half game out from getting into that top 6, and they've been playing better as of late here too. They've won their last 5 games in a row, even though that they've been 6-4 in their last 10, but taking advantage of their schedule here too. Picking up wins against the Suns, the 76ers, the Hornets, the Heat, the Spurs. They've got a big one coming up tonight, taking on the Nuggets at Denver. So they could get themselves back into maybe the top 6 there. The only thing is that Golden State, who's holding a half-game lead over the Minnesota Timberwolves, they've also won their last 5 in a row, and they have been 9-1 in their last 10 games. But Denver has overtaken the Lakers for that second spot in the Western Conference too. So Denver's got a little something to play for here too. But you talk about what OKC and what Cleveland has done so far in the NBA, just dominating their conferences. Cleveland up 8 games over the second-place Boston Celtics, and then OKC up 11 games over Denver. Man, just pure domination. Absolutely pure domination. We've got, speaking of hoops here, the Big Ten Conference Tournament begins today. Wisconsin, we know, is not playing, but they may be getting some reinforcements back. Max Klesmit practiced the other day for the Badgers, and he said he's going to be playing in the Big Ten Conference Tournament. So we'll find out later on today who the Badgers will be playing, whether it's going to be Northwestern or Minnesota. So Badgers waiting around to see who that's going to be. Other Big Ten games in action. You got Iowa taking on Ohio State, and then USC taking on Rutgers. And then it picks back up tomorrow. The first game tomorrow, though, is going to be Indiana versus Oregon. Wisconsin right now is slated to start around 1:30, but again, we know it kind of depends on the conclusion of the game beforehand, so it's not going to necessarily start on time. But I think Max Klesmit coming back is going to be a nice, addition, another veteran addition, senior addition, guy who's giving you double-digit points in that. Good to get him in maybe a little bit of action, maybe knock off a little bit of rust because he's missed the last couple games here because of that lower leg injury, that ankle injury. So maybe get a little bit of rust off, but getting ready for the big dance for that NCAA tournament. And I think now this Big Ten Conference tournament, we were talking about it last week. The debate's gonna pop up here, especially maybe for a team like Michigan State and such. But it happens every year, especially when you get to the Big Ten Conference tournament. Is how far do you want to go? Do you necessarily want to win it, or do you maybe want an extra rest day for those top teams? Maybe, depending on how the other tournaments go, maybe it could be a big factor if a team that's kind of, hovering between a 1 or 2 seed, if they get an early knockout, maybe Michigan State, potentially they win the Big Ten Conference tournament, that puts them into a 1 seed. So it's always different. It's right. It's always a little bit different. But we look at, for Wisconsin's sake, because of that loss against Penn State, I think has made this Big Ten Conference tournament a little bit more important than what it was maybe just less than a week ago. Because of that loss to Penn State, I mean, you look at bracketology, the latest one, they dropped to a 4 seed, but they're out of Milwaukee. They're not going to be in their home area. According to Joe Lunardi from ESPN, he's got them as a 4 seed and taking on Yale, and they'll be in Denver. And I don't know if this would actually match up this way, but if they were to win, they would potentially play in the second round Michigan, Big Ten team right away, Michigan in a 4-5 matchup. Again, don't know if it actually would work out that way, but there you have it. But this is where I think, Wisconsin, if they make a run in this Big Ten Conference tournament, maybe get back to where you can play your games in Milwaukee. Maybe you need to get up to that 3 seed, because right now, some of the games that are in Milwaukee, you've got, Iowa State's listed as a 3 seed playing in Milwaukee. Heck, Illinois is a 6 seed playing in Milwaukee too. So we'll see. I think that's going to be big for Wisconsin if they can get their opening round games, their first two games in the friendly confines of the state of Wisconsin. So I think, this Big Ten Conference tournament has kind of, is a little bit more important now, considering that loss against Penn State, trying to move up a little bit and maybe trying to secure your first two games in your home state of Wisconsin.